Welcome to Britain, a developing country, a show that looks at the UK's emerging industries within property development, the arts, lifestyles and culture. Stephen Galpin, one of our resident property experts, is one of the UK's leading property consultants and also a freeman of the City of London. In this programme, Stephen talks to Tony McLean from the Peace Education Programme, Simone Sandelson, a volunteer for the programme, and he meets former offender Errol McGlashan, who has benefited from the programme.
I'm with Tony McLean, manager of Peace Education Programme. Now, this is a programme for people who have perhaps been in prison or in other institutions, to give them a sense of well-being and awareness of what they could be rather than perhaps what they are at the particular time. Tony, tell me how you got involved with this programme.
Well, the programme is a course of lessons that go over either 10, 20 or 30 sessions. I got involved and I took 20 of these sessions 5 years ago and found it incredibly renewing for me. I therefore decided that I wanted to bring this to anyone, really anyone in society who would benefit from it. I then, having got to that point, I then became interested in taking it into prisons. I got this fascination that I thought that it's such a good course that I'll bet it will work really, really well in prisons. And so I started doing all what you do to approach prisons, etc., going to different awards, dinners, etc., and finding it quite difficult to get any proper interest or contact.
I mean, what we hear a lot about in the news, of course, is the lack of resource for prisons and institutions. One would have thought they'd be most grateful for your intervention and providing something that is worthwhile. But moving on from that, how would, say, an inmate contact you or engage with this programme? How would it be advertised to them?
Prisons have many, many courses available. They're advertised by the media that that particular prison has for advertising them, and this would be completely voluntary. Somebody asking to come to the Peace Education Programme or the PEP, it would be on a completely voluntary basis.
Okay. So you would typically get how many recruits for the first session?
For the first session, maybe 12 to 15.
Okay. And does that grow, or is the attrition rate quite high?
No, it goes up and down. We have a situation where we have two courses each week, two classes each week, but the prison that I'm working in at present here in London is extremely transitory. People leave. Well, the average stay time is 35 days.
So tell us a little bit about the course then. As somebody signing up to this, what would they learn in the first couple of sessions, and what would they progress to throughout the course?
The first couple of sessions are firstly on inner peace and secondly on appreciation. Those are the two themes, first of all, that people would start on. It would then progress towards, thirdly, inner strength, fourthly, self-awareness, fifthly, clarity, sixthly, understanding. Then we go on to dignity, then on to choice, then on to hope, and then on to contentment.
Very good. Now, as you've said, each course is standalone, so if it is taking place in a transitory prison, that doesn't really matter, so they can take benefit from even one lesson, presumably. How is this programme put together? Do you have would it be the same programme prison by prison or institution by institution?
Yes, absolutely. It consists of DVD clips with a speaker, one particular speaker, giving who's extremely experienced, giving his account of and his experience of all of these different themes. At several different points during the lesson, the video would be stopped and the participants are asked to give their feelings on what they've heard, to express themselves on the same subject.
Okay. Now, I read on your website, for instance, there's over 150, I think, prisoners that took advantage of this course in Thameside Prison, for instance. I mean, that's quite a huge number. Do you find that the word spreads? Do you find that somebody perhaps going in for the second time ask for this course again or ask to continue?
Absolutely, definitely. Yeah, people will come back to the course having done it, or people will want to run straight on into a second course, do it again perhaps.
Your volunteers, as you've said, do this free of charge. You spend a lot of your time without remuneration, presumably. Do you have any funding for this? Is it government funded? Is it local authority funded?
So far not. We've been doing this at the local prison in London, Thames Side, for 3.5 years now. We've been doing it entirely out of our, funding the costs out of our own pocket, except for the printing, which the prison helps with. We want to apply to get expenses, but so far, no, we're doing it for nothing.
Right, okay.
For the love of it.
Okay, well, that's as good a reason as any. Will you be spreading throughout many of the prisons in London? Are you going national with this, or have you already gone nationally?
In the last 2.5 years, we've started to go national with it. We don't have any more prisons in London. That doesn't really matter to me. We have 8 others now around the country.
How many volunteers do you have in total?
Around the country, we have around 120 working. We've been going 3.5 years at Thames Side, and we've had probably around 350 people. That's based on about 100 per year will actually go through the course.
Okay, and nationally, what would that number go to?
At least in this 2.5 years, we've had at least 1,500 people going through.
Very good. And how difficult or easy is it to get volunteers to help you with this?
They seem to come when the need is there. If it's explained to them what's going on, what's happening, and what the course does, etc., people are attracted to doing it.
Tony, you're obviously doing a grand job. Thank you very much for your time this morning, and wish you every success with the programme. Thank you. I'm with Samuelson, who is one of the volunteers for the Peace Education programme. Simon, hello.
Hello, Stephen.
Simon, you're an artist with a growing reputation. You've had exhibitions across London now. I'd like you to tell me how you got involved.
Well, I actually sort of did a part-time job at Wormwood Scrubs teaching portrait painting for about 4 years. And I actually found it very disheartening because I just watched the guys coming back again and again, revolving door. And then I met someone who was part of the Desmond Tutu Foundation, and they told me about this course because I think they have a link. And I signed up.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, before we get on to what you do on these courses, did you have to undergo training or?
Well, there was a bit of training, but actually you do learn on the job because
Okay.
there are 3 facilitators in every session, so you might take a back role to begin with before you facilitate.
So typically you work with 2 other people.
Yes.
It would be a course with how many people on it, perhaps?
It varies. I mean, you know, as Tony was saying, probably about 10.
How's the reaction for the first time that they come to this course? Do they appreciate really what it's all about?
Well, it's actually very individual. I mean, some guys really find it weird because it's such a different mindset and something they're completely not used to, and other people just take to it and come up with very profound comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in essence, you're trying to draw out confidence in people,
Yes.
self-esteem,
Yeah.
self-awareness, and probably awareness to the society that they live in.
Yes.
Probably more than anything.
That's right.
So tell us about a typical session. How would it go?
Well, we would introduce the session we were doing. Say we were doing choice, and we would then show a film on choice. And then afterwards we have a discussion and people give different thoughts on their own experiences and how perhaps they could change to think there is a choice, because perhaps we don't realise there is a choice a lot of the time.
Okay, so choice is an important factor. It's a very important factor in life. What about self-esteem? How would you educate somebody to understand their own potential?
I don't know if I'm the one that does the educating, to be honest. I think it comes through the DVDs, because they're very much about, you know, creating the values that really matter, and, you know, how you can easily take one side or another. There's one particular program which is about the different seeds that you could sow. So you could sow a seed of kindness or a seed of hate, and you choose which one you want to feed, basically. So it's sort of, a lot of it's based on metaphor too.
How would then that progress through the course? So we look at self-esteem, we look at awareness about the social environment that they find themselves in. How do you get them to actually analyse that sort of position? Is there a thought process that you teach?
Well, they very much, I mean, honestly, it's led by them as much as us, because they have issues that they need to deal with, and so very often that will come out and then it can be referred back to the topic, if you like.
Yes. And do you put a lot of the inadequacies that you're probably trying to replace down to parenting or social background or
Very much so. I mean, very poor opportunities in life, you know, difficult parents, trauma. They're very, you know, a lot of people are very vulnerable.
I know for a number of years I was interested in the youth criminal justice system, and I think, come to the conclusion that there weren't many bad kids, but there were a lot of bad parents.
Oh, I think that's probably, you know, I think that has something to do with it. But, you know, everyone can change if they're given a route, if they're given tools to change.
I think it's a fabulous opportunity, because I think from what we read about prisons and the regime in prisons, there needs to be a purpose, doesn't there?
Completely.
And if you don't provide it, then they're not going to see it.
And it's not, you know, it's not going to help them in any way. But you know, it's amazing some of the comments that we get back.
And do you find once you've started a course that the same people will stay with you?
They will if they can, but sometimes they're released sort of part of the way through. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Well, I suppose that's just a downside of the system that we operate.
It is. Yeah.
But it's a shame, because I think to just incarcerate people without purpose is probably not the best idea in the world, and these people need guidance, don't they?
Absolutely, and everyone is capable. Everyone can water a good seed if they know how.
Is that the sort of premise of your teaching, that it's a seed that you're implanting into somebody, whether it be on a basis of peace or integration or education?
It's more that they choose, people choose, we all choose what seeds, if you think about it, we want to plant. So it's just that idea of, well, which way are you going to go?
I was going to say teach, not quite the right word.
Facilitate.
You facilitate at more than one venue?
No, it's the same place. I'm at Thameside.
You're at Thameside,
yes.
are you?
Yeah.
So that's quite a success for you then, the number of people that have gone through there in the last 3 years.
Oh, it's fantastic. And I mean, there are examples. There was a chap who was a terrible self-harmer, had cuts all down his arm. And then he came to us at the end of the course and he just said, I'm not going to do this course anymore. And we sort of said, you know, have you not enjoyed it? And he said, no, I'm not self-harming anymore. And he showed us his arms, and actually he'd healed. And he said that the course had sort of inspired him.
Okay,
So,
well, that must be very rewarding when you get that kind of feedback.
Very
That's
rewarding.
fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, Simone, thank you very much for your time this morning. Thank you for explaining to us about your programme, and wish you the very best with it.
Thank you.
After the break, Stephen talks to Errol McGlashan, a former offender who has benefited from the Peace Education programme. Before the break, Stephen spoke to Tony McLean and Simone Sanderson about the Peace Education programme and its benefits in rehabilitating offenders. Stephen spoke to former offender Errol McGlashan about how the programme impacted his life.
We're here today talking about PEP, which is the Peace Education programme, a programme that's helping prisoners come to terms with their own situation, making them more aware. And I'm with Errol, who's been a recipient of that particular course.
Indeed,
Errol,
I have.
hi.
Hello, Stephen.
Tell me, how did you get involved? How did you first become aware of the course?
I was serving a prison sentence at Thameside, one of my many prison sentences I've served since I was 14 years old, and I'm 54 now. I'm going to be 55 next year. And so being an older man in prison, you sort of think to yourself, you start to feel a bit embarrassed, actually, because I'm in jail again, you know what I mean? So I'm looking, so instead of seeing Thameside as a prison, I decided to see it as a retreat centre. So I told myself, I am at a retreat centre, which meant that I was available for any of the processes they had. And one of the things that came up was the PEP, the Peace Education Programme. So it served two purposes. One, maybe I'll learn something. And the second thing, it gets me off the wing.
Okay. So your first session, you turn up, and how does it go?
There's two ways I'll answer this. So first of all, you've got to remember that you've got men who are on this course who are not disciplined. I may be one of them, you know. So we will talk out of turn. We'll talk to each other. We'll tell each other to shut up. So there was that going on. But there was also what I really enjoyed about it was that you didn't have to do anything. It was a bit passive. You had to just sit there and watch this video. And then after that, we had a conversation. What was good about the conversations was that we weren't allowed just to start ripping in, you know, that they were curtailed.
So what was the first subject you came across?
I can't remember what the exact first subject was, but they are subjects that I was familiar with. Maybe not connected with peace, more connected with personal development like that, you know, like things like gratitude, having an attitude of gratitude for the things which are around you and all that, you know. So it was good to see, you know, Prem talk about these things in a different context.
Okay. Errol, was this the first time that you'd ever involved yourself in any kind of, shall we say, educational process in prison?
No. I left school with no qualifications whatsoever. I left school at 15. I didn't leave school, I escaped from school. One of the best things I'd done because school was torture to me. But every time I went back inside, so that's where I got all my GCSEs, a couple of A-levels, and yeah, half of a degree I got in prison.
Well, you've used your time well.
Oh yes, I tried to. You know, you get fit. You might as well get fit, give up smoking.
Now, you've talked about other people on the course. Did you find some of the people were perhaps there just for the sake of getting themselves out and about?
Some were there for the biscuits.
Yeah,
without a doubt, there were some people who turned up just for the biscuit break and the coffee, because
yes.
You've got a biscuit break and a coffee halfway through. But that don't bother me, you know. If I run an event, I don't care why people have turned up. You know what I mean? As long as you use something to get them to turn up, and then you plant the seeds in their head.
And how many of these sessions did you end up doing?
So I think I'd done 3 lots. So I think there's 10 classes on each one. I can't remember exactly, but I think I'd done 3 lots because I'm the type of person, you know, you need to tell me twice, maybe 3 or 4 times before it actually sinks in.
Well, you've obviously got it.
Yes, well, you know, what's really good about it is that, you know, to be totally honest with you, you know, you get to the age of, you know, my age, I'm in my 50s now, and you look around, I'm thinking, right, where are my friends? Where are my childhood friends? How come I'm not as connected with my family as I could? How come I've always had major aggravations with all my relationships, you know? How come I'm estranged from my sisters and brothers? And I had to look at myself and think, okay, there must be something about me that is stopping people from becoming too close to me, you know? Like so give you an example, just the other day, I got lost, you know, and I wanted to ring someone for them to Google and get me directions, and I had to scroll through tons of people. So I had to think to myself that I am acting in a way that I don't like and other people are not liking, you know what I mean? And one of the things is that tendency to have a row or have a verbal, you know, at someone when really peace is sexy. You know, one of the things that Prem Rawat says, he says that when you are peaceful, you're content. And he says that, do you know how attractive a content person is? Which really appealed to me because, you know what I mean? I want to maintain my attractiveness.
Sure. We spoke to Samuelson, and she says one of the key things about these sessions is that it's you guys that do the talking. You guys actually lead it at the end of the day, and I think that's very good. And I think it's certainly coming out with yourself.
Yeah, because you know, I can imagine you do this. You know, you can do this pep course in a prison, and you're going to get one lot of sort of people watching it. But you can do it in a school or in a business centre, which, you know, is easily transferable, and you're going to get different types of people watching it. So it's really important that we use our own voices and talk about where we're coming from.
I know the programme itself wants to try and introduce this into the pupil referral units to widen the, I suppose, viewership of the...
It's a brilliant idea. It's a brilliant idea. You know, look at me in my 50s, and I'm coming across this going, wow, he's got a point. It's not about the world needing peace. It's just about me needing peace. You know what I mean? You know, the peace is within. And he's got, you know, I'm sure when I was 11, I would have got that concept had somebody said it to me. But when I was 11, as I was growing up, we're not really taught to be peaceful. We're taught to be peaceful in the face of authority, maybe, and stuff like that. But, you know, with your day-to-day peers, It's about standing your ground. It's about, you know what I mean, making sure no one takes liberties with you. You know what I mean? It's about not being peaceful. In fact, as you're growing up, in order to get respect, you know, I grew up in a children's home, you know, in order to get respect, I had to be violent. I had to be non-peaceful in order for people to leave me alone, stop bullying me, and get some respect. And when you act in a violent way, after a while, people think, okay, let me leave him alone. You know what I mean? Respect. You know that geezer. You know that Errol. He's really hard. You know what I mean? That sort of stuff. That Errol can have a row. You know, and I used to think. You know, I used to be quite. That's where my self-esteem was. You know what I mean? Anyone who take liberties, I'd look at them and say, do you know you're talking to, you know what I mean? That kind of attitude. I don't want to have that attitude anymore. When I see people with that attitude, I just think, no, man, there's a better way of dealing with this. There's a better way. Just being calm, having compassion. So someone's acting in a right, wrong, and in a right out of order way towards you. And if you can have compassion towards them, if you can maintain that smiling, you know, like if I'm on the tube now, for instance, if somebody was looked at me, I'd look at them, then look away, then I'd look at them, thinking, okay, I'm going to look one more time, and if they're still looking at me, you know what I mean? You give them that sort of grimace, you give them that look. Now I don't do that. Plus I've got new teeth, so what I do now, I just smile at them. It takes it out of them. It doesn't matter who if it's a woman, she'll probably smile back. She doesn't even realise she's looking at you. A guy will just grin, you know what I mean? And just this idea that you can take the sting out of someone, take the anger out of someone just by being but just by showing kindness, but just by showing compassion. But I've had years and years and years of not doing that, so I'm training myself to do that now, and I'm constantly reminding myself to the extent where when I'm not like that, I let myself down, you know, because, for instance, I had a guest in my house the other day, and I've got a sign which says, please take your shoes off. And she wrote underneath it, yes, but clean the carpet first. So I rang her up, I said, what, you on my wall, in my house. You're lucky you're not still here. And I'm giving it all that. And then afterwards I thought, oh, that's not how you want to be, you know what I mean? So what if she wrote on your wall, I should have just been nice, I should have just been kind. It's just a little moment in time, you know what I mean? But it's all moved on, I couldn't do nothing about it.
But you know, you're absolutely right. At the younger age that can be instilled into somebody, the better. So,
yeah. As I was saying, I had nightmares at school, you know, I hated school, you know, I grew up in care, I was one of the only black people in my secondary school, you know what I mean? I got tortured, then they decided to show Roots at school, you know what I mean? They decided to show Roots while I was, you know, one of 3 black people in school, so I was tortured. Actually, that wasn't as bad as the boringness of the teachers, you know what I mean? So I got kicked out of school regularly. I'm pretty sure that if there was a group of us who would just say, okay, you've been kicked out of school, let's get over that. Look, there's this group of videos that we'd like you to watch. You know, before the world had really landed on us, before we learnt this idea that you have to be hard, that you have to fight back, that you've got to know how to throw a headbutt and all that, you know what I mean? Before that, when you're sort of 10, 11, 12, maybe even younger than that, if we had some of that. Now, I'm not saying that I would have given it tons of attention, but I'm pretty sure those seeds would have been planted in me.
Errol, I do understand one of your interests is poetry.
Oh, yes, definitely.
So tell me about that.
Well, some people call it poetry, some people call it spoken word. I call it spoken word because spoken word sounds a little bit more funkier than that. When you think of poetry, you think of Wordsworth and Shakespeare and that, you know what I mean, falling asleep at that time, even though I love Wordsworth and Shakespeare now, but I only got into them in my 50s, you know. So I do something called spoken word, which is just, as I said, a trendier name for poetry. I've been doing it since 2011. I've made a bit of a name for myself. They call me Uncle Errol, affectionately. If you YouTube Uncle Errol poetry, you'll see tons of stuff. And I've got to say, you know, as when I was in jail and as I was watching the Prem Rawar videos, you know what I mean, you get inspired, you know what I mean, you'd write down a little line, So when the volunteers actually asked me, could I write something? I already had some lines, so all I did was just chuck the lines together. So I've done this video for them. I think it's one of my busiest videos. It's got about 3,000 hits at the moment, wow. And yeah, and it's about the seeds. It's called Seeds of Peace.
Very good. So Errol, what I'm going to ask you to do, why don't you finish things off with a verse?
he speaks without cease, sowing seeds of peace. But I knew no peace, life just seemed so unjust. I mean, where is the love? But this little man seemed connected to a deeper knowing, showing me the trees that were already growing from the seeds I was unknowingly sowing. Because you can do what you want and act as you please, but no matter where you're there, you're still sowing seeds. Back to me. It was unrequited love that had me sad and irate, so I was sowing seeds of anger and hate. And when I should have been showing a little bit more patience, I was sowing seeds of frustrations and ended up in all kinds of messed up situations, constantly thinking about all the bad that's going to happen to me. And so I sowed seeds with a self-fulfilling prophecy till I was unable to trust the seed-sowing word from my own seed-sowing mouth. And so I sowed seeds of uncertainty and doubt. But I listened to his words and I became more self-aware. I looked in my garden at the trees that was there and I was filled with despair. I raged and I ranted. It was all down to me. I was responsible for those trees. They came from the seeds that I planted. Still, it's never too late to do what you always should have done. Nah, and it's never too late to be what you always should have become. Not as long as the morning comes with the rise of the sun. So, if you've got an effed up forest of trees like me, now is the time to act, but you won't need an axe. No need to gut those trees like a lumberjack. Just plant no more of those trees that have got you messed up. Don't water them, don't feed them, let them wither and rot. Sow the seeds you want to sow. Seeds of joy, kindness, understanding and peace. All those other troubling trees will have to settle and cease. At first, it's going to be slow, but steady as she goes, pretty soon, those seeds are going to grow. And to give your seeds a little bit more clout, water them every day with the benefit of the doubt. If you've got any doubting to do, then doubt that any bad is going to happen to you. That's how you make a self-fulfilling prophecy work for you. That's what he says you've got to do, and that's how you make the sun come through. So now as I walk through my orchard, life is nowhere near as awkward. Inspired by his message that must have come from above, now I sow seeds of love, of love. Now I sow seeds of love.
You've obviously learnt all about this later in life rather than when you were a teenager. But I think you're a shining example of how good this course is. Be very proud of yourself, my man. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.